We know that arrogance is a disease that's very, very dangerous, because the Prophet ﷺ told us that no one will enter paradise who has even a mustard seed of arrogance in the heart, and that this wouldn't happen, that this person could not enter paradise until a camel, if you think of the size of a camel, enters the eye of a needle. So it's an extremely dangerous type of disease that we have to actively work on if we find that within ourselves, and rather we should always be vigilant of that disease. And there are other diseases such as envy, for example, the disease of always wishing that other people, for example, lose the blessings that they have. It's this idea that if other people are beneath us, then we can feel better, right? If other people don't have so many blessings, then I could feel better about myself. So it's also a disease, the disease of envy or hasad, wanting another person to lose the blessings that they have out of jealousy, is also a disease of the heart. And this is also a very dangerous disease, because the Prophet ﷺ said that envy, it burns good deeds like fire burns wood. So it's an extremely toxic, disease of the heart, and also it's extremely destructive to the person who has it. We often think about the harm that we can do to another person with hasad, and that's very real too. Obviously, we can also do harm on another person through our own envy, our own hasad, our own jealousy, or through ayn, the evil eye. That is very real, as the Prophet ﷺ said, al-aynu haqq, that the evil eye is real, is true. However, there's also the damage and the destruction that happens to the individual who holds that envy, or who holds that hasad within their heart. That it's like a fire. And if you imagine, what can a fire do to wood? What can a fire do to your entire home? What can a fire do to an entire city? When we look at forest fires and various parts of the world, you see that fire is destructive. And so the person who harbors envy within their own heart, that causes a lot of damage and destruction to the individual themselves, besides the harm that you may cause to the other person. So these are diseases that you may find within a sick heart, and there are various other diseases as well. But what you find is that even when we spoke about hawa, desire, or the inclinations, and that worship of the desire as also a disease of the heart. And what happens with a sick heart is that there will be this struggle internally that's much more intense than the normal struggle that if you have a purified heart. But basically, this person will sometimes act out of the sickness, and sometimes there will be times when it acts out of health. So again, just like a physical body that becomes sick, it won't be at its best, and it will actually cause the individual to act in ways that are very displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that are very self-sabotaging. Again, that ultimately, if we disobey Allah, who are we hurting? We're hurting ourselves. If we obey Allah, who are we helping? We're helping ourselves. It's much like a doctor who gives medicine to a patient, and if that medicine is not taken, if the patient doesn't take the medicine, who are they hurting? Are they hurting the doctor, or are they hurting themselves? Moreover, if a patient decides that they want to drink poison, who are you hurting? Are you hurting the doctor, or are you hurting yourself? And so ultimately, anytime we have a sickness in our own hearts, we're not hurting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is al-Ghani. Allah is completely rich and self-sufficient from any of us. But we're ultimately hurting ourselves. And so that sickness that we may have in our heart is hurting us. It's just self-destructive. And a person who has sickness in the heart will sometimes act out of very self-sabotaging ways, and in a self-destructive way, where they're not even acting in their own best interests, self-interest, but rather thinking that it's good for them, but in fact they are hurting their own selves. And this is a principle we see in the Quran, where Allah talks about those people who sin as ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ, that they actually oppressed their own selves. They wronged their own selves. It's not Allah that we're wronging when we sin or disobey him. It's ourselves that we hurt when we disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So keeping in mind that the sick heart is actually a heart that's hurting itself, that's internally, it's a self-destruction internally.